That wasn't for me, I can assure you guys. But welcome back. Welcome to a new Hustlein video. Just like last time, today we are in city of London, more precisely in Aldgate. I'll explain why in a bit. But first of all, I want to tell you more about this city and how important it is for the overall global trade. As you know, this is one of the biggest cities in the world nowadays, London. I think it's the third biggest city in Europe. It is said that more than half of its inhabitants are born outside of the UK. So you can imagine how diverse this city is and the people it attracts. It is a bit windy today, so hopefully you can hear me well. I'll try to speak louder, maybe. London had 7 gates. The old city of London, called Londinium, had 7 gates, and this is the most eastern gate of the old Roman city. Nowadays, London attracts a lot of people from all over the world. Its GDP is bigger than many of the countries of this world. It produces a lot, and of course it's a point of interest also. It's kind of a connection between Europe and the western side of this world, the other side of the ocean, I would say, or at least many people say this. What I find interesting about this city, and it struck me since I moved here a couple years ago, is that you can see in London a very good balance between old and new. A very good balance in terms of old buildings versus new buildings. More precisely, you can see a lot of new buildings that kind of embrace the old, and also the old embraces the new. I'm not sure if this makes sense for you, but this is the best that I can explain it today. First of all, let me show you the pancart here. So once I show you the map, you'll be able to understand easier what I mean. So basically, Aldgate used to be one of the 7th gates the city had, and Aldgate is the most eastern one. This used to be the Roman wall from here to here. There were about 7 of them, and we are on this side, I think, kind of here. This is Aldgate Square, and basically this is the Aldgate fort. The fort looks like more like an entrance with 2 towers and a very huge entrance in the middle. More or less we are staying on the wall. But I think this used to be London Wall. As you can see, it's written here. We are basically staying on the previous London Wall that used to be here. Yeah, so the reason we are here, as I mentioned, is not because I want to show you how City of London looks nowadays, but because I want to explain to you more about its past. And the best way to explain what London past looked like is to also show you some of its oldest remainings or buildings, and to tell you more about its history. In AD 43, the Roman Emperor Claudius, together with the general Aulus Plautius, managed to invade Britain for the 3rd time. and also for the last time basically. It was a huge invasion. They've used more than 800 ships in this invasion. So basically they managed to go up until Thames, and they built a settlement. They established a settlement. So somewhere between AD 43 and AD 50, they started building this settlement, which eventually led to the colonization of the southern Britain. And thanks to that, this is how the Romans basically established a dominance in this southern region of this island. I guess it's important to mention that the Romans built Londinium, which is nowadays city of London. So to not be confused with the metropolitan area of London, or otherwise called Greater London, for the reference, there are 33 boroughs in this Greater London, in the whole area, which we now call London nowadays, and City of London is one of them. However, at that time, considering how skillful were the Romans, they managed to initially build this settlement and eventually established here a colony, and this led to the Romanization of the Britain, because the Romans at that time were better constructors. Their knowledge was much better, considering also the tools they had and how vast their empire was at that time. So that's how basically they started. It was almost 2,000 years ago. Look at this view, guys. So behind me is Aldgate, where we started this video. One of the gates of Londinium. There were in total 7, and now it's just a square there. But you can still see some reminiscence of the old town here nowadays. They managed to build great things, I would say. Plenty of people eventually moved to London from all over the world, basically, considering that the Britons were already trading with Gaul. After the Romans invaded Gaul, they started invading Britain. I'm not sure exactly where we are now. Wow, what's this? I think I shouldn't be here, guys. But there was no sign that this is I thought it's a public place, just like an alley, because a lot of times London has these places where these narrow streets, and where you go and you can go from one place of the city to another just following these streets. It seems that this wasn't the case. Another reason why the Romans invaded this island and settled here in the old city of London called Londinium is because at that time Thames was not that narrow as it is now, considering that we are talking about 2,000 years ago. Thames was wider and deeper, of course. So after they conquered Gaul, which basically more or less is the is the area where France is nowadays, Luxembourg, parts of Switzerland, parts of Germany, northern France, and so on. So once they conquered Gaul and they realized that the Brits were already trading with them, their plan was to take over this place. And once they arrived here, they realized that actually this is a great place to build such a settlement. This is another reason basically why the Romans invaded Britain and eventually managed to make it their own capital, the Roman British capital. Now, the most powerful characteristic of Londinium was its maritime trade. As I told you previously, at that time Thames was much wider and deeper. It is said that when it comes about how wide was this river, it was about 1 kilometer wide. So it took about, they're saying, around 100 to 150 meters from each side in comparison to how it is now. So considering how wide was Thames at that time and how deep it was, this was the perfect spot for the Romans to build this settlement. Britain was full of iron, full of tin, of course plenty of ships, deers, gold. A lot of people are also talking about how rich was this island in terms of gold. And that's a good combination because basically the Romans were very good traders. They knew how to build ships, they knew how to cross rivers, they knew how to populate different lands that they were conquering. Now establishing this settlement here in Londinium, they were able by themselves to make these trades that the Brits were known for previously. That was a very important step for them to decide to build this settlement here. And another interesting thing that I want to mention is that maybe you wonder, what's the story of London Bridge? Not a new story, but old one. Well, it seems that the history of London Bridge dates back to the times of the Romans, basically. When they came here for the first time, as I told you, they settled on the upper side of Thames, on the north, basically. But there was something missing from this picture. A bridge. Now they knew they had to build a bridge between the two sides of Thames, and the best place to build it was very close to where I am now, and I'm gonna show you also the London Bridge. But before showing you, I just want to point out that a lot of people, when they are visiting London or when they are thinking about London, when they are coming here, they think about London Bridge being the one with the towers. However, that's the Tower Bridge. This is the London Bridge, a very boring one if you ask me. So this is the London Bridge, and that's the whole side of City of London. We started our video back there, somewhere, where Aldgate was. As you can see, I'm not sure if you can see now, the Tower Hill there on that side. It's one of the most simple bridges London has nowadays, and back then they decided to build this bridge around this place where we are now, because this was basically the best place to build a bridge, the closer both sides were one from each other. The bridge, it is said that it was built somewhere in AD 52. However, I will go now to a church on the other side of the bridge, and I will show you the original piece of this bridge, which dated a couple years later. However, it's probably the most original thing you can find in London about this bridge. Now this is London Bridge, and beside the fact that it's boring, as I told you, it's very crowded. But the view is great. So that whole side is City of London. So we are coming from there, that side, right there, and now we are going towards City of London. Around that area there is a church. So right here I found this place that I want to show you. Probably the most authentic piece of the oldest bridge in London that you can find. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it says here 75 AD, which is basically like 20 years after the Romans initially started to build this bridge, almost 2000 years ago. And this is basically the only piece that remained from that period. It's basically a piece of wood that was put here. Yeah, amazing, right? I'm now on a street called Walbrook. You can see it there, the name of the street. So the reason why I am here is because there was another river quite famous in London beside Thames. This river basically was flowing into Thames, and unfortunately in time those who came after the Romans built on top of it, and the only things that can be visible nowadays which remind you of that river is a creation of an artist called Cristina Iglesias. This is the only remainings from that time which remind you of this river. Now this river was basically splitting the city of London in half. It was flowing in between the two hills, Cornhill in the east and Ludgate Hill in the west. So as a reminder, city of London, initially called Londinium, was built on top of these two hills. Unfortunately, not only Thames shrank, but also other rivers, and this is one of them. Walbrook now only can be seen as the name of this street, and behind me, thanks to this creation, unfortunately this river is history now. So we are here, if you are asking where we are now. Now I try to find a more quiet place in order to tell you about a very important moment in Londinium's history. As I told you, somewhere between AD 43 and AD 50, the Romans built Londinium. They started with a settlement which was around 60 acres. Initially, maritime settlement, so thanks to the River Thames, which was quite wide at that time, they managed to build, to transform the city in a port. They also managed to build a bridge around AD 52. But a very important moment for this city came in AD, somewhere between AD 60 and AD 61. At that time, of course, the Romans were the most powerful nation that was dominating south of Britain, and something wasn't right about this. In Britain, there were British tribes, British Celtic tribes. What I'm talking about is about a king, one of those 11 kings that surrendered to Claudius when they invaded Britain in AD 43. One of those kings was Prasutagus, and apparently he died of natural causes around 60 or 61, and his wife Boudica with him, they had two daughters, and his wish upon his death was that his kingdom would be shared between his two daughters. The Romans didn't agree with this, and once he died, the Romans took his land, basically his kingdom, and they made those people that were living there to pay tribute to the Romans. So not only that his kingdom wasn't divided between his daughters, but they also took his kingdom, and these two daughters and Boudica had to suffer unimaginably because the Romans were cruel with them, which led to the biggest revolt at that time. Boudica, Prasutagus' wife, in around 60 to 61, decided to uprise, and she gathered around 100,000 people, and they actually wanted to destroy all the Romans' settlements because what the Romans did to them. So imagine 100,000 British Celts coming towards London. At that time, London wasn't the capital. The capital was Colchester. It had a different name, a Roman name at that time, but this is the equivalent of nowadays Colchester. And they also went for another important city when it comes about Romans, St. Albans. 100,000 Celts, British warriors, decided to uprise, and basically they burned down all these three cities. Colchester was the Roman capital. They fought really hard, and even though they outnumbered the Romans, unfortunately the British warriors, together with Queen Boudica of the Iceni, if I remember correctly, that was the name of the tribe, were defeated. Although the destruction of these three cities was total. So this is why from Colchester they decided, the Romans, after they defeated these British warriors, they decided to move the capital to Londinium. And to not get caught, it is said that she poisoned herself. So that's how she died. She didn't die in a battle. She died because she poisoned herself. From then, Londinium started to be rebuilt properly, and more people started to move to this settlement, which after that battle, so around AD 60 to 61, Londinium became the capital of the Roman Britain, and it stayed the capital of the Roman Britain until the end. So that was their second capital and the last, but definitely the biggest one. Remember what I told you about the River Walbrook? Well, we are now on the west side of that river. On both sides were people living. However, on the west side, ordinary people were having their houses, although all the places looked pretty similar. And what I want to tell you about now is the layout of their house. The way you enter in the house, you enter into an atrium, and after that atrium basically had a pool in the middle, and on one side of that atrium, opposite the entrance, there was so-called tablinum. So this tablinum is a room where the masters of the house meet, or let's say the important people that were living in that area, in that settlement, in that house, in that building. I find it very interesting because although obviously the look isn't modern, I feel like this layout encouraged people to talk, to communicate, and also maybe to form alliances. It's good to have to know your neighbors, let's say. In the 2nd century, Londinium had a population of around 40,000 people, 45,000. It is said that the peak was at around 60,000. So the city was expanding, the business was booming. Everything was going well for them. However, in the 2nd century, the disaster struck again, and some of those signs can be, it is said that some of those signs can be found here next to the Museum of London, which is right there. Some of these remainings are from the Roman time. We're on Noble Street. And the wall that you are seeing right now is not Roman, this one, the tall one. However, there you can see some of the remainings of Cripplegate. So as I told you, there were 7 gates into this city of London, into Londinium, the old London. So in the 2nd century, as I told you, there was a big event, which was a fire. But how did we get to this event? Well, beginning of the 2nd century, Hadrian wanted to become emperor. Before and after he became emperor, which was in AD 117, there were 3 major events. So first, more recently, people found some skulls, beheaded skulls, somewhere around this area. And then there was a fire, which some specialists look at this of these remainings, and they could tell that the fire was started intentionally, so it was a deliberate fire. And then after Hadrian became emperor, the Cripplegate fort was built, which you can see some remainings here. That's basically one of the towers, that one. In conclusion, we can tell that it was an uprising, and it is said that a lot of people didn't want for Hadrian to become emperor, and maybe this is why a lot of people were beheaded. So their skull was found around this area. Then the fire, and obviously after Hadrian became emperor, oh, I forgot to mention that the fire burned the whole London Wall, although it was rebuilt after. When Hadrian became emperor, Cripplegate was built. And not only that, a couple of years after Hadrian became emperor, he visited Londinium and he decided to build a wall, which is now known as the Hadrian Wall. It was built in the middle of this whole island to protect, at that time, the Romans against the Scottish tribes. So the way you look on the map, basically from the east to the west, from the North Sea to the Irish Sea, I think the wall was initially around 120 kilometers, and this wall was built after Hadrian decided to have another layer of protection against the northern invaders. After that event, London continued to expand in terms of size and also population. Also, one more thing that I want to mention, because I think the light doesn't help us anymore, so I'll have to end the video here. One more thing that I want to mention was that considering how big was this city, and also due to the fact that the Romans were trading with plenty more nations from all over the world, the city attracted people from all kinds of races. People from France, from Spain, from Italy, of course, because that was the epicenter of the Roman Empire. But also, apparently, they found some remainings from people that used to live here, but they came from northern Africa. So, as you can tell, this was a really cosmopolitan city at that time. There's no wonder that today the city is so diverse in terms of population, languages, education, skills and knowledge and so on. So I guess I'll have to end the video here. As I told you, probably we are very close to the shortest day of the year. They are saying that this year is on 21st of December, so it's not late in the day. However, yeah, that's how it works. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a lot of interesting things about Londinium. That being said, I will see you in the next one.